how you like it, yeah.
Hello, and welcome back to the We Don't Know TV podcast. This is a podcast where we watch the first episode of a show and then we talk about it. My name is Leaf. I will be your host. So today we are going to talk about Miss Marvel. As of recording this, the Marvels movie is going to come out. I have no interest for it other than Miss Marvel. So that's why I was like, oh, let me go back and rewatch the first episode and see how I felt about it. So right off the bat, oh, and by the way, at the end of this, I will be talking about spoilers. So if you're interested in that, stay till the end. But yeah, so right off the bat, the show starts with Blinding Lights by The Weeknd, which I think is such a interesting choice in the fact that, like, most of the other Marvel projects, mainly the movies, right? You get either the Avengers theme or something. Like, I usually feel like it's like an older song. You know, if you're thinking of like Guardians, you usually think like 80s. Or just something along that. I think even one of the Spider-Man movies, I forget, started with like an older song, like as a joke, but still. So having Miss Marvel start with Blinding Lights, I feel like sets the tone of like, hey, this is current. And I believe when the show came out, Blinding Lights had been out for a little while, and that song was fucking everywhere. Like, there was no way to not hear that song. So I think it was a very interesting choice, but like a good choice to be like, hey, this is modern. This is like someone who really grew up in this, world of superheroes. But we'll get into that. The biggest thing and the best thing about the show is, and this was in the trailer before the show launched, is the style of the TV show. It definitely has that Scott Pilgrim style to it, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can just kind of look up the Scott Pilgrim trailer and you'll know what I mean by that. It has the mixture of like Scott Pilgrim but for like kids or like a family show. So I think the show or this episode nails whatever audience it's going for, because it feels like it belongs on like ABC Family, like a high budget, like I guess a super high budget show if it was on that network, or like, like a Disney Channel movie. So yeah, I think, well, I'll get into that later. Anyways, I think it's kind of funny that, and this is from the comics honestly, but Kamala loves Captain Marvel. That is her favorite superhero. And again, from the comics, but like in terms of like being an outside MCU fan or knowing what a lot of the fans think, at least online, I feel like her movie, Captain Marvel's movie, did alright. And sure, she was in like Endgame, but she really hasn't like been around. So for Kamala to be like, oh yeah, this like little known superhero, not little known, but like we're not like deep in the history of Captain Marvel in terms of like the MCU. For Kamala to be like, yeah, this one is my favorite, it's like, oh, okay. Like it's a little weird, but I kind of get it. I love Ghost Rider, not the Nicolas Cage movies, even though every time I bring it up, people are like, oh, the Nick Cage movies? I'm like, no. But anyways, let's not get into me. Interesting thing about the show is it's steeped in, how do I say this? Muslim culture, Pakistani culture. I hope I got that right. I probably should have looked that up. But as an American, it was the fact that they were doing this was like, one, this is cool. Two, not to get political, but I feel like a lot of other mediums, when you have people that would, I guess, be Pakistani or Muslim, are usually like terrorists or not as seen as bad guys. So having like, no, this is what a regular American Muslim family like dynamic could look like. It was like, oh, this is cool. I haven't seen this perspective. We should have seen this perspective, but I like that we're getting it here, especially with the music in the show. I love when culture, like if something's going to tap into a culture, I want to feel like I'm in the culture. So having music around that to support it, I think works a lot. I like that I like that Kamala like backs the car into the thing and is like, yo, what if we just walked away? And he's like, that's my car. And I was like, oh, that's a perfect little joke. But the thing I really loved is they're like, the parents are so supportive, even though she clearly messed up like really bad. They're just like, how dare you take her out on the road, even though it was a road test. It was like, well, that's kind of, you know what I mean. But I'm already down with the parents at the beginning of this episode. When she meets her friends and they're like making jokes, and they already had a bet about whether she'd get her license or not. I was like, okay, I'm really liking these friends. This world off the bat feels like it's lived in. Especially with the friends, like they feel like they've been friends for a long time. Then by the way, I took notes, so if it feels like I'm like drifting off, I'm like looking at the notes but trying not to do the plot at the same time. Still learning. Anyways, I think it's so funny that Kamala gets called into the office to talk about her future even though she's a junior. And just I feel like it hits as anyone who's grown up where, you know, you're a teenager and everyone's like, have you figured out what you want to do with the rest of your life? And you're like, I'm 17. You know what I mean? Like, when she's like, do I have to figure it out by like tomorrow? Or, you know what I mean? It's like, let me do my thing. Like, I understand things are on the horizon, but can we chill out a little bit? And then up next, we get more of her friend. I am, how do I say this? So it's kind of a good bad thing. So him being another tech person is like, how many tech people do we need in the MCU? Granted, I don't know Kamala in the comics, so I don't know how much a part of her story that he is. But, you know, we already have Tony, we got Bruce, we had Shuri, we got Ned. So there's so many like tech people / people in the chairs and all that. And I'm sure there's some I left out. So I was like, another one? But what I liked about the gadgets that he makes are they look so homemade that I kind of gave it a pass. Because it looks like, oh yeah, I took like an AM, FM radio and I like gutted it and put in some stuff and like duct tape it. And somehow I can do, you know, these other things that you wouldn't think it should be able to do. But, you know, it's not like clean press. This isn't like smooth, like alloy and stuff like you would see with Iron Man. This looks like, no, I just went in my garage and like slapped this together and somehow it works. So that is the part that I was like, all right, I'll let him slide on that part. But no, I really like him. I don't like the little scene where they try to like force them to be like a love interest almost. I was like, yeah, can we cut this out? I really like them as friends, and I think the show would benefit from them just being friends. But we can get into that later. Kamala trying to convince her parents of like, hey, I want to go to this thing. I know you don't know what it is, but I promise it's not a party. Can I just you know, go? Like, you know, my friend needs my help, and you know, just there was so much of this story that between Kamala and her parents that like hit on almost like a personal note, because I definitely had conversations with my mom where I was like, oh, what if I got invited to a party? And she's like, well, what if I took you for like 10 minutes? And it's like, so when later on, when you know, her brother ends up convincing the parents of like, yeah, let her go, and the parents are like, okay, we'll let you go, but you're gonna have to wear our you know, the outfit that we picked, and you got to go with your dad, and you got to have matching outfits. And it's just weird, like this is my thing, I want to do my thing, and I know you're trying to support me, but like you're doing it the wrong way. But of course, you know, a teenager doesn't know how to express that, so it's just like, no, like I don't want to do that thing. And it's so sad when the dad's like, oh, okay, you know what I mean? Because I see his point of view of like, yeah, let's go, you and me, like spend time together. And she's also like, but like this is a thing I want to do, and this is for me, and now we're making it like a you thing. So I love that part. I'd say it's probably the highlight of the whole episode. It's just that moment between them being like, you can go, kinda, and her like, I want to go, but not like that. Also, talking about siblings, that when she's like, yo, you let, you know, my older brother get away with everything, and I can't do anything in this house. On a personal note, same thing. I said mine's the reverse, where I was the oldest, and I felt like my siblings got away with everything that I couldn't. But we'll leave it at that. Let's not get into my personal stuff. One small thing, right? So Kamala has that thing with her parents where she's like, I don't want to go like that. And then they're upset. And outside, it's the daytime. And then she calls her friend, and it feels almost immediate, and it's the nighttime for him. And I feel like it was a small, I mean, you could just hand wave it away, but it feels like, oh, you guys must have just like, you must have had a plan and then had to do this kind of thing last minute. Cause he's like, why don't you come over? And then they go hang out on the roof. But like when they were talking to Kamala, it seemed like it was the morning and then suddenly it was nighttime. So again, this is a very nitpicky thing, but it was one of those things that I was like, wait, hold up. And I had to like rewind. So anyways, again, I like, and I said this earlier, the style of the show, her explaining her plan to her friend and being like, we're going to do this here. And then we're going to go to Avengers Con and it's going to be awesome. And he's like, so we're going to take the bus. And she's like, did you not see my whole presentation? Because I love that part because I feel like me personally, I am both those things. Like I will over explain a thing just for someone to, but then also I'll be on the other end of someone to tell me a story and I'll be like, okay, so the whole point of the story was like this thing happened at lunch, like why did you tell me, you know what I mean? It's like, well, I just told you like this whole, I don't know, basically I liked it. I like that the plan goes awry because I feel like mostly as someone who likes to plan stuff, I'm used to my plans being off and you know it just kind of falls apart. So I think that worked. One weird thing was like their plan was to get on the bus with their bikes, and maybe this is another nitpicky thing, but I was like, don't buses have bike racks that in the front or the back or whatever? Because when I get on the bus, they're in the front. So I was like, why are they taking their bikes on the bus? It's a little weird. But anyways, when they get to Avengers Con, I thought it was interesting that they chose to play the Captain America music. I know that he was the first Avenger, obviously, but I feel like this would be a part to play like the Avengers theme for, you know, the fans. So having it be like, wow, Avengers Con, where you're supposed like all the Avengers are here, and then playing Captain America was like, what? Why are you doing that? But I love the vibes. Everyone's dressed up. I love the different takes. Like, you know, one character is dressed as someone from Wakanda. It's not even like Black Panther or Shuri or anything like that. It's just like someone from Wakanda. Or like you had the Ant-Man people where their like heads were ants and then they were man on the bottom. So I was like, oh, okay. You know what I mean? Like you always get you ever look at Comic-Con pictures or anything like that, you always get those really unique, interesting twists on characters and like how you perceive them. I'm like, oh, this is really cool. I like this. It looks real. So very well made. Shout out to the props and all that. And then Kamala, another nitpicky thing. So she gets on stage with all the other Captain Marvels, and then she stands in the middle. And you know, this is when she starts to get her powers. But I was like, everyone's standing in a line. Why did you stand in the middle? And I feel like, again, another nitpicky thing, but like, hey, have her when she's talking to her friends, like in the background, people are going up one by one to show off their costume. And then when she goes up, you know, it's her turn. Because her just being like, I'm just going to stand in front of everyone else in this costume contest is like, okay. Like, who told you you're important? But anyways, when everything goes awry and then Kamala sees the popular girl about to get hit by the hammer and she's like, get down. And the girl just says, bah, right? It was interesting that like she didn't grab her or anything or like push her out the way. She just gets hit, and the hammer's huge, and it's like you don't know what it's made out of, but somehow that girl got grip because she hung on. Because I figured it looked like it was gonna blow her out the building, but no, she made it through. You know what I'm saying? Kamala gets her powers. I wish we had the technology to do it the way in the comics where she's more like Mr. Fantastic, where like her skin stretches and stuff. But I've also, you know, with CG and, you know, with some of the shows and like not getting enough time to really flesh out how things are supposed to look, it's kind of cool with the little crystals instead. I don't really care for the platforms, but when she like actually stretches out and like catches the popular girl, I was like, okay, I kind of like that look. I was surprised when Kamala gets back home and her mom's there waiting, and she's like, what are you doing? Like, who are you? And the only reason that I ended up feeling the mom's part is because I'm looking around Kamala's room, and literally everything in her room is Captain Marvel to like the 12th degree. So I can see her mom being like, yo, you have like, you're trying to be this superhero, and like you're making your whole identity this superhero, and she's like, you're not thinking about who you are. And I found that part interesting. The rest of like getting in trouble, whatever, I'm like, I'm on Kamala's side. But I think having her room be like this overload of one person is, I'm like on the mom's side of like, yo, you gotta chill out a little bit, like focus on some other things. Kamala's supposed to let this, all this information sink in from her mom, and she's just like, I got superpowers. And it's like, of course. And that's why it's perfect, because why would you'd be like, oh my, if you got superpowers, and especially the good ones, you know what I mean? Well, not that hers are good, I just mean like in general. Anyways, you're gonna be like, holy crap, I can move stuff with my mind. Or you know what I mean? Like, you're not gonna be like thinking about going to school or whatever. You're gonna be like, how do I figure this out? I gotta start testing it. You know what I mean? So yeah, in totality, I hope this episode made a lot of sense. But I think I love the culture in this episode. I think it feels lived in, especially with the friends. You could, you never know, but like they feel like they've been friends for a while. I like the what's the word I'm looking for? The grounded feel of being like, hey, Kamala is this girl that's been in this world with superheroes, right? I think this all works. And then of course the style of like the way the shots are, and there's a conversation that her and her best friend are having, and the camera is inside the lockers as they're like talking, and when they're sending out emojis, and it's like, oh, this emoji's on the ground in like an art style, or it's in the sign on the window or whatever. Like, I think all of that works. So in terms of my scaling, because if you're new here, I have a 3-point scale. So it's 1 and done, it's give it a chance, and it is I'm in. I'd say just going off this first episode, I'm in. I'm fine with watching something that is aimed more towards family, and not like this big action-packed like teenage adult themed thing. I think that having a culture that hasn't been properly represented, mixed with the style of the show and the fact that all the characters seem very likable, and even the popular girl doesn't seem like, she's not the usual like, oh, you can't sit here. She's just like popular. You know what I mean? Like, everyone feels like someone you might want to hang out with. So with that said, yeah, I'd give it a I'm in, and I'd watch more of the show based off the first episode. So this is the part where I'm gonna get into spoilers. So if you haven't seen the show and you don't want to be spoiled, I appreciate your time. Give this episode a rating, and then of course when you catch up, you can come back. If you don't care, or if you've already seen the show, I'm going to get into spoilers in 3, 2, and so as per usual, I'm going off memory of the show. I remember loving the family dynamic. Unfortunately, the style that they set up in the first episode pretty much just like dissolves, which is so sad because I really love that style. I mean, Scott Pilgrim is one of my favorite movies of all time. So having that in this first episode, I was like, yeah, I'm loving this. I want more. Give me more. In fact, the family and style of this show, especially going back and watching this first episode, is so good. I was like, man, I would have watched this show if it was just a girl living in a world full of superheroes that was just normal. Like, if she didn't have any powers, I'd be like, I'd still watch the entire thing. But I remember the Marvel stuff, and by Marvel stuff, I mean the superhero stuff, being like the weakest part of the show. Like, week to week, it wasn't doing it. The bad guys were like like uninspired. They're like, oh, we're from this other dimension, we need to get back, but like it could like destroy the world if we do it. I don't really like the whole, like, when you're setting up a hero and it's like, almost like a sky beam type thing. It's like, why does everything have to be so major? Like, why can't we just have like smaller villains? And they even then, the thing I remember about these villains, right, is that they finally get to the thing to open up the portal. Homegirl goes to touch it and gets disintegrated, and then the main villainess, Kamala's like, don't touch that, and she's like, this is the way, and she like touches it and then dies, but she says it as if she has a plan, and I was like, what, you, huh, like what just happened? And then I remember her son getting powers, and then they do the Marvel thing where they're like, what if we had someone with powers that was the same as the main character but evil? But except I remember him not really being evil. But even then, it was like this superhero stuff feels like you just slapped it together and you spent way more time on the culture and all the good parts of the show that the rest of it kind of fell at the wayside. I also remember with the son that he was the love interest, and homeboy, the best friend, was like, didn't like him, and I didn't like that. What's it called? Like romantic angle, like that dynamic of like a love triangle. I was like, get this out of here. This doesn't work. You know what I mean? And then I remember with the other best friend that she's like running for, not council or some sort of council in their like society. That's almost, I don't remember exactly, but she's like running for something and then she gets it, but like they kind of like drop the storyline. And I was like, okay, that's cool, but like, what does that mean? And like, is she really making progress? Or okay, I guess the show's over. You're not gonna tell me. And then, what else could I say about this season? Yeah, I mean, I just remember really liking the human element, and just meeting her family and like learning her backstory and everything that had to do with the culture was just so good. And then even you had the damage control, maybe, I don't remember what the organization was called, but they were like playing the role of like, oh yeah, we're gonna come in here to your synagogue and we're just gonna do whatever we want, and who cares, because you're not gonna stop us because we're the government. And then she's like, we gotta stop people like them. And then this is the part where I kind of wish they committed to in some way. And she's like, no, like kids with powers. And it's like, no, we know what you meant. And I wish they would have just went there. Like, just go there. You're already there. Just go. Like, make a statement. Yeah, that part is good. And then if you ask me what was the plot of the actual like superhero stuff, it's like, cool, she gets powers. I remember she tried to save a kid and it almost went wrong, and she goes and meets these ninja, but then they get taken out for the most part. And then of course, like I said, you got the Jin. I don't remember how I say it. But you got the bad guys, and other than them just killing themselves on purpose, the main lady, I couldn't tell you a thing about them. Right? And then and then you had the government force, and they're just a government force, and then the show ends. And it was like, again, if I had to give the show a rating, I give it 6 out of 10. I feel like it could have easily been an 8 out of 10 if, like a lot of Marvel properties, they would have just took time and like actually done a better show. But instead, it feels like they did half of a good show and then a very mediocre other show and slapped it together. So it's stuck in this weird middle that it doesn't have to be. I am interested because they're like, oh, Kamala, you're a mutant. It's like, oh, okay. But I am of two minds of this, like a lot of this first episode, which is, one, yes, let's get the X-Men. Bishop is my 4th favorite Marvel character. I know. Are you probably like, who? If you don't know what I'm talking about. I like a lot of like side characters as my main characters. I'm both like DC and Marvel. But that's a whole nother conversation. But yeah, I'm like, okay, But then also in the comics, if I remember correctly, Kamala is supposed to be an Inhuman, and I want them to integrate Agents of Shield. So like for that to be taken away, it's like, oh, can you guys just do the thing? Because there's 2 characters I want from Agents of Shield to come over to the MCU, and you won't do it, even though we have an entire multiverse. But it seems like you guys don't know what you're doing. So yeah, I'm a little fractured on Kamala being a mutant, more for like the larger MCU, not specifically for Kamala. But yeah, I feel like I've been rambling. In terms of like the season, if I had to give this season what is it, a ranking? I always forget what I call it. Yeah, like one of my rankings, if I had to do it, I still give it a I'm in if I had to pick. Because like I said, the family stuff is so good that I'm like, okay, I'm in. You give me more of that. I'm down to hang out with these people. Let's get another season. Let's do it. And then I'll just suffer through whatever the MCU stuff is. And I think that's why I don't really have any, what's it called? I don't really have any interest in the Marvels movie, because it's like, cool, you're gonna give me the superhero part of Kamala, and that's the part I don't care for. So I'd rather have another season rather than have her in a movie. But or in a movie that is, more, that isn't just about her and more about 2 other female superheroes. So she's like sharing more than she is focused. But I'm hoping I'm wrong. I'm hoping the movie's good. Again, she's the only part of that movie that I'm like, yeah, I'm down to go see it. But I'm going to end it there. Enough of my rambling. Thank you for listening to the show. I will be uploading every week, and I'll see you next week. All right. Peace.